Right, good morning, everyone. And gosh, welcome to week 9 of, I'm going to say having to do these because it's obviously not from what we would choose to do, although it is wonderful to see everyone each week. Here we are on the last day of Hanukkah. And I have to say, although it's been a really hard week, it's been nice to see the positivity that people can bring to try and bring light all over the world. Has been heartwarming. So thank you for joining us this morning, and of course especially to our presenter Yuval, who was now lost. Let's do it this way. I'm going to add you now.
Okay.
Over the week since we've met, as I say, we've had Hanukkah, we've had various not so good news. It feels very heavy at the moment. But it's still, and you proved it yet again when I asked you the question at the beginning, so important for us to be together and to connect with each other and with Israel. And having asked the question of those of you that came on earlier, I will keep these going, especially during the break time when there isn't adult education going on at JW3. There is obviously a lot still going on with films, the pantomime and the ice rink. Thank you, Yuval, for joining us. So Professor Shany is the former Dean of Hebrew University's Faculty of Law and a former member of the chair of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. He remains a professor at the Hebrew University, to which we have close links, and as well a researcher at the Israel Democracy Institute. Some of you will have heard him earlier in this year when he spoke beautifully at JW3 in person. Our thanks to JW3 trustee Denise Joseph, who recommended Yuval to join us this morning. We've already had some questions, so after Yuval's done some opening statements, I will ask those. And please do continue to put yours in the chat so I can add those in if there is time. Yuval, I know it's not an easy task we've given you this morning, but please share with us what's uppermost in your mind after this week and these 10 weeks. Over to you with great thanks.
Thank you, Judy, for having me, and thank you all for joining us. When Denise and Judy talked with me, I thought it might be perhaps useful to brief you or share with you some of the professional work that I and my colleagues who work in international law in Israel, and especially at the Hebrew University, have been doing in recent weeks. Partly because I think, we have an access to a certain pool of knowledge and expertise that could come, can come, we believe, useful in these difficult times. But frankly, also, this is somewhat of a coping mechanism for all of us, because this is a way in which we feel that we can be somewhat useful and could be perhaps make some contribution of our own to what is a very difficult situation. Now, I'm here in London now, so that's I understand that some of the previous speakers were speaking actually from Israel. So I mean, I'm going next week to Israel, but I've been here. I have a daughter in Israel who's in the military, so of course I'm following up things in a very personal and close manner. But I'm here because I'm running a program that Hebrew University and 11 other law schools from around the world are operating at King's College. It's called the Center for Transnational Legal Studies. And we had 12 Israeli students who were also this semester here with the program. And part of the challenge of being here was also trying to address their many difficulties and concerns. I should say that some have gone back to enlist, some have gone back to be with families, but most of them have returned to London to finish the program. In terms of suggesting that we can be useful, I think at least for us at Hebrew University, there was a strong sense that this is something that we are perhaps uniquely situated to contribute, because our legal clinic that gives pro bono legal services to victims of human rights violations and other people in need has been working in the last 5 years with the 4 families of Israelis who have already been held hostages in Gaza since 2014 and 2015. These are the Goldin, Shaul, Mengistu, and Assaid families, and we are representing them for the last 5 years before a variety of UN bodies, with a view to raise awareness to their plight and to frame the tragedy that would occur to these families and to their sons as an international human rights violation. So, of course, when October 7 happened, and suddenly we are talking not about 4 hostages, but we are talking about almost 250 hostages, something of a completely different magnitude, we thought that we could at least volunteer to share the expertise and the experience that we have gathered in representing those families. And I should say only last July, we were with the families in Geneva, and we met the High Commissioner of Human Rights and the Deputy President of the International Commission of the Committee of the Red Cross, and we have been at the Human Rights Council. So we've already we knew quite well how the system operates and what we can realistically expect and what we can realistically not expect from the international human rights system. So we did offer our support and services to the Forum of the Hostage Families, and they did actually collaborate with us. They did ask us to represent them. And we are also representing our legal clinic, some of the families. And on that basis, we have submitted a long string of letters and applications and legal petitions to a variety of UN bodies with a view to framing again this very serious humanitarian tragedy and concern as a human rights violations. We've also, in that regard, we have initiated public letters that were signed by hundreds of international law experts from around the world, classifying the taking of hostages as an international crime, both as a war crime and a crime against humanity. We've also wrote a separate letter on the specific plight of the children who were taken hostages. And although these efforts, unfortunately, do not translate immediately into legal remedies that can be acted upon, certainly when you're confronting an adversary that does not operate within any rule of law context and doesn't really consider these sort of concerns, we do think it is important, at least when you engage with other countries, when you engage with other stakeholders, to be conversant in this vocabulary and to emphasize that this is a very important aspect of the situation that must be seriously considered. And we think that partly because of this campaigning led by the Forum of the Families, but also supported by these other peripheral efforts, the issue of the hostages had become quite central to the decision-making process in Israel, but also in other capitals around the world. So this is one area of activity that we have been very much involved. I was also involved with colleagues in other areas of activities. I will just briefly mention that we have published a number of blog posts. This is a very important arena in which a lot of the discourse around the Israel-Hamas war is taking place. And again, as people who have worked for many years on this topic and know the ins and outs of many of the specific issues, I should say I'm not always on the same page with the Israeli government on all of these issues. On some issues I have been critical before and still am critical. But on the other hand, when being exposed to the discourse, you cannot avoid the feeling that a lot of the assumptions and a lot of the assertions that are put forward are ill-informed, both about the law and both about the facts. And as Israelis working on this for a very long time and very closely, we felt and still feel that we have some responsibility to get the record straight. And we did, together with colleagues, we have published a number of contributions on the blogosphere and participate in this discourse, which is supposed to provide or to utilize our expertise in order to provide a better informed discourse. And in parallel, finally, I should say that there has also been an effort that we are engaged in, again, the international law academia in Israel, to discuss with decision makers in Israel some of the issues that we spot as being problematic. So, for instance, I can tell you that we have been very concerned about some of the statements that were made by ministers and by politicians that were quite wild and outrageous, going all the way to ideas of using nuclear weapons in Gaza, and we identify the very harmful impact of these statements, although we do not consider them to have an impact on the actual decision making or on the actual conduct of hostilities. They do generate a lot of harm and actually create very serious legal complications for Israel and Israelis going forward. So we try to do our best to stymie these sort of statements and to basically raise awareness with decision makers about the harmful impact, and also to maybe underscore some of the concerns that we also have as international law academia concerning access to humanitarian provisions for civilians in Gaza, where Israel has taken a line that was at least initially borderline in its approach in terms of traditional international law analysis. Finally, I should say that another, so to speak, front or another area of engagement has been with our students here, who, as I said, have experienced a lot of difficulties. A lot of them, as you can imagine, in their 20s, they know a lot of people who were killed or taken hostage. One of our students here had her cousin killed in the attacks. So for the students, this was a very difficult situation to be here. And the other students in the program were also interested in learning more about the conflict. And we have had some meetings between myself, the Israeli students, and the non-Israeli students here to discuss in a very open and frank manner. The foreign students, I mean, the American students, the European students are hearing a lot of very big words like genocide, like colonialism, and they were actually struggling what to make of these very strong and very serious allegations. So I think we were successful in creating a forum in which we could have an open and relatively free discussion of a lot of these issues. And I think this also helped the Israeli students here feel that they are in a safe space and that they're also on solid footing in terms of the professional engagement with these sort of issues. So maybe I'll stop here, Judy, and I'll be very happy to engage with you and the other participants about any of the issues relating my field of expertise, human rights, international law, or more generally how Israelis who are looking at those issues, at the outstanding issues from these perspectives, how they perceive the current situation.
Thank you so much, Yuval. That was so clear and beautifully put. So I'm going to turn to a question that I wasn't sent in earlier, but it connects more with what you've been saying just now, and then to the others. Based on your former chair of the UN HR role, why do you think Israel is treated so harshly by the UN, and they do come over as anti-Semitic at times? Is there anything that you feel we could do to change the narrative?
Well, the UN is a complex and often dysfunctional organization, in the sense that you do have within the UN certain areas that are completely political. I mean, the UN is really a lot of things. At the same time, you have political bodies like the Human Rights Council, which is really the meeting place of states. So to the extent that most states are hostile to Israel and hostile to Israel's position and arguments and narrative, there is almost no hope that you are able to utilize these bodies in order to attain recognition of Israel's case, of the suffering of Israelis. So this is one area where I think it's I mean Israel really operates vis-a-vis these organs, the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council, in a damage control kind of approach, and I don't think there is much that can be done. I think where there is greater expectations and as a result, perhaps deeper disappointment is with regard to the professional agencies of the United Nations. The UN has so it has there are political organs, but there are also professional bodies. It's a large bureaucracy headed by the Secretary General, but also has officials such as the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the heads of the various agencies, and also human rights experts who are devoted to dealing with issues such as violence against women or violence against children or torture, disappearances, and the like. And here I think the reaction has been mixed in ways that probably suggest that some of these positions have been over the years highly politicized as well. That is, that people were appointed to these positions not on the basis of their professional integrity and qualifications, or not only because of that, but also because of their political sympathies. Or maybe that the pressures that are created within the organizations are such by donor countries or by the political or sociological milieu in which these professional bodies are functioning, that they do not actually exercise their mandates in ways which are impartial, independent, professional, objective, and the like. And here is, I think, where publics around the world can convey their disappointment through their elected officials, through the governments, but sometimes also directly by speaking out in media and sometimes communicating directly with these bodies. Because they are not immune to criticism. We have seen, for instance, UN Women, which is a professional agency devoted to upholding the rights of women around the world, including the rights of women victims. It took them almost 2 months and very significant pressure and lobbying by NGOs, including Israeli NGOs, feminist NGOs, to eventually acknowledge the atrocities, the sex crimes and the gender crimes that were committed during the October 7 massacres. So I wouldn't say that it is a lost cause, but it requires sometimes a lot of effort to move these bodies into action. I should say that some UN agencies have been more serious in their approach and have been more balanced in the way they have stated their concerns. So there have been some specific mandate holders, such as on counterterrorism or on torture, that did speak out in ways which are more acceptable and professional. So I think it is a mixed bag. It is a very big organization, and one has to take into account the different elements of that organization and convey expectations that they would do a better job. Because on the whole, I think that's a general feeling among Israeli experts in this field, that they have been pretty much deserted by many of the agencies that were supposed to champion their cause, but also by a lot of colleagues who were quite reluctant to speak out in favor of Israeli victims.
Thank you. So just to move a little bit, and we'll probably come back this way again, but do you think there's a formula, a scenario for a Hamas military surrender, personally?
So Israel has already been, in the past, it had some arrangements with regarding Palestinian militants' surrender protocols. Especially, we've seen this in the early 2000s, around the Second Intifada, were some very tense situations, such as the siege of the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, was diffused through an agreement by which Palestinian militants would lay down their arms, and they will be then afforded by the Israelis a way out into exile. And they have been, some of them have been sent to other countries in Europe and outside Europe. It is possible that, and of course, Israel also has an earlier experience with Arafat in Beirut in 1982, where part of the terms of the end of the siege of Beirut were that the PLO leadership would be allowed to get on a boat and leave. And this is something that can also be done in this regard. We have a lot of international actors in the field. We have the ICRC, we have UN agencies on the ground. We have Arab and regional countries heavily involved, and I'm sure that if there is an interest in going in that direction, there wouldn't be a problem in actually working out the modalities of how this will be actually, because it seems that if there will be a deal in going in that direction, it would also probably involve the release of hostages and the perhaps suspension of hostilities. So this is something that certainly can be worked out.
Let's hope. So just to go back to jurisdiction, if you look at the principle of universal jurisdiction, allowing national courts to investigate and prosecute international crimes that are committed on foreign territory by foreign nationals, are we likely to see this again, and the impact on the political, military and other Israelis?
Yes, so there is no question in my mind, and I don't think in anyone's mind, that what happened on October 7th is an international crime, and as a result, the International Criminal Court is already announced that it is investigating the Hamas leadership and may submit criminal indictments against them. This is, I would say, very highly likely that it will happen. And other countries in Europe are already moving as well in that direction and are commencing investigations against Hamas leadership for the role of in the atrocities. Now, these same structures, I should say, could also be directed against the Israeli leadership. So to the extent that there are allegations that Israel is indiscriminately bombing Gaza, or that Israel is starving the population of Gaza, these, to the extent that these allegations can be legally substantiated and pointed at specific individuals, I think there could be also attempts to bring charges against Israeli officials. This is why I said before that the statements that were made by some government ministers are extremely dangerous, because they do provide critical, so to speak, evidence about the putative intent to inflict harm on civilians, which I do not believe that this is, I mean, and I know as a fact that this is not what the military is operating under. This is not the framework in which the military operates. This is not also the official position of the government. But when you combine large numbers of casualties with very wild statements talking about destroying Gaza or not leaving a stone unturned in Gaza and the like, this looks very bad and could lead some legal systems to try to move beyond a complaint into an actual criminal investigation.
So yes, yes, absolutely. So just to go on a little bit deeper into that, is there an obligation under international law? So we've often asked this from a non-legal point of view, but from international law, for Israel to provide aid or water or even power to the people of Gaza in a situation where the professional government of Gaza is at war with Israel?
No, so that's a very good question and a very difficult question, and it relates a little bit. It hinges a little bit on the question of what do you consider Israel's position vis-a-vis Gaza to begin with. Now, a lot of the allegations that are made against Israel with regard to the supply of electricity or water, from a legal standpoint, from a moral standpoint, I think it's a serious issue whether Israel should be cutting off water and food supply. I think it's a very problematic policy to put it in a British understatement, right? Or even in terms of its policy rational, I would say it's a dubious. So the declaration about a total siege was probably not a very fortunate declaration. From a legal standpoint, however, if Gaza is not an occupied territory, as Israel has maintained, and I think it rightful as a legal matter, Israel is correct. Israel withdrew from Gaza. It's no longer an occupying power in Gaza. The very fact that Israel now has to reoccupy Gaza in order to get basically restore order in Gaza only underscores that it was not occupied before October 7. If Israel is legally not the occupying power in Gaza, then it has no legal obligations to supply Gaza with utilities. This is indeed something that has never happened, to the best of my knowledge, in any conflict between two states or two territorial entities. I mean, you would not expect Ukraine to provide water and electricity to Russia, for instance, in the Ukraine-Russia war, and we haven't seen in World War II requirements for the UK to provide Germany with electricity. This is not how wars normally play out. What Israel is required, however, under the laws of war, is to allow third parties to introduce humanitarian supplies into the area in question. And here I think Israel was playing a little bit, and I hinted to that before, was taking a borderline policy by putting quantitative caps on the amount of food, water, medicine, etc., that is entering into Gaza. And here I think this was essentially a decision that could have been taken in a more humanitarian and a probably more international law consistent manner.
Thank you. So we'll finish with the question that which comes up nearly every week, but you can see it from give us your view from a different point of view, which is the future of Netanyahu, and kind of why is he still there, but certainly what will the coming weeks, months, and future be?
The future of Netanyahu. Okay. Well, he's currently deeply unpopular in Israel, as you know. The opinion polls are very negative for him. I think there is a strong concern among many in Israel that he is in this aspect as well is in a very serious conflict of interest, because his political interest is to prolong the war as much as possible in order to maybe change the dynamic, maybe buy him some time to change the political dynamic. For Israel, however, this is not necessarily what is in its best interest. We also see it's the same dynamic play out with regard to the day after discussions, where Netanyahu is already eyeing the next elections and therefore is taking a very hardline approach. Not this, not this, not this. But like in other contexts, never saying, okay, not this, but what, okay, not no to this, but yes, to what would you say yes? And I think this is putting Israel also in a very problematic place, because you need to be proactive about planning for the day ahead, and also introduce some realistic ideas on the table. So if there were elections tomorrow, Netanyahu would badly lose, might not even be put forward as a candidate. But he has proven himself to be a political survivor, and to the disappointment of many Israelis. And I don't think he will be able, personally, I don't think he will be able to survive politically this thing. This is simply too large of a catastrophe, and I think this failure attaches to him very much. He's the individual in Israel who is most associated with this failure, which is not only an intelligence failure on day one, but the whole concept that we want to empower Hamas, which he was the architect of this policy. I don't think he can really shake this one off. But it's going to probably take longer than many in Israel hope. Many of his opponents hope to get him out of power, and people are now talking about elections maybe at the end of 2024. So this is probably the realistic time frame that we are thinking about.
Thank you.
Maybe just after the UK elections.
Okay, that's a good place to end. Yuval, thank you so much. It's brilliant to have another point of view. For those on the call, when I first asked Yuval, I had assumed he'd gone back to Israel, but actually what you brought to us was as if you were in Israel. So it was wonderful to have you. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention at the beginning, and to show you, those of you who haven't seen, we do have the brochure in. Great excitement yesterday. It is a little late, and there is masses that's also not in the brochure that is up on the website, including on the 9th of January, when we have the Chief Rabbi looking at the future of British Jewry, because this has obviously been part of what's been happening over the last 10 weeks, has been the anti-Semitism and the dealing, the psychological dealing of with that, as well as the actual. So there's a lot to look forward to. That's the word, but a lot that you can engage with in the coming year. I wish you a good last day of Hanukkah. I wish you a good break if you're having one. I look forward to seeing you next week and on Zoom, and the following week, those of you at Limud, and in person in January. Yuval, thank you so much. It's so good to see you again, even under these circumstances and on Zoom.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Those of you who've asked questions that we didn't get to, I will send those forward to next week, so the more general ones. Thank you all again. Take care. Shabbat Shalom.